Well, the final jewel of the Triple Crown is upon us. Scott Shapiro, Darin Zoccali for TwinSpires, taking you through this last leg, a field of 8 set to go, the unique mile and a half, the one time around the Giant Big Sandy at Belmont Park. And Scott, this is a race that I guess on paper you could say the way it's come together. If you would have asked me 5 years ago to put 5 years ago, 5 months ago, 5 weeks ago to put together the field for the Belmont Stakes, I don't think it would have included We the People, especially as a 2-1 favorite. It probably wouldn't have included Rich Strike and a lot of these others. So this race looks a lot different than we probably would have thought it would have when the Triple Crown started.
Without question, Darin. We always know the mile and a half is going to suit other, maybe different horses than the Preakness and even the Kentucky Derby, and things are going to go a little bit sideways, but not quite as much as we anticipated this year, where it looked like there was a real top tier of 3-year-old colts heading into the Kentucky Derby. Of course, 2 of them ran second and third, but it was Rich Strike getting the job done, and really excited to see how he performs and also the action that he's going to take in his first start since winning at 80-1 from well off the pace under Sonny Leone. But yeah, very, very few of the horses that we probably anticipated being in this race 5 weeks ago, 5 months ago, however you look at it, are in here. Although Mo Donegal, likely one of the ones to take the most money, I think he was pretty much on everyone's map as a potential Belmont horse, but the rest of the field, it is interesting. And I think it's a pretty interesting and challenging handicapping puzzle.
And Scott, as somebody who's made a morning line for many years, I have given up trying to understand the betting in the Triple Crown races, especially after the Preakness. There's so much kind of novice money in there that you just don't know what these horses are going to go off at post time. Now, I guess the Belmont, you would say, probably is the one that is least applicable in terms of that type of novice money. Maybe it's a little bit more, plays more to true in terms of a guy looking at this race and saying, well, there's not much pace. I'm going to go here. I'm going to go there. But that leads us to the discussion, the morning line favorite, and also the pace of the race, which has been the big topic because there is virtually no speed in this Belmont Stakes, with the exception potentially of We the People, who, by the way, was not this blazing speedball who had to be out by 12 lengths. He just happened to show in the Peter Pan that he does have some zip to him, and nobody else in the recent past anyway has really shown that kind of speed. But there are horses in this field, Scott, that have shown speed at times earlier in their career. So you really have to handicap this race one of two ways. Does We the People from the rail gun make an easy lead, or does somebody else pick up the running with him and try to push this pace a little bit?
I would think We the People would be pretty aggressive in here. That is his major asset. Obviously, getting a little bit of a class hike here. The one time he took on Grade 1 foes in the Arkansas Derby. He didn't have a great trip that day, but things did not go that well. He's always been really highly regarded, Darin. I heard about this horse long before his debut at Oakland in the barn. Florent Giroux rode him in his first couple of starts, spoke very highly of him. But I don't see any reason for them not to send aggressively from the inside draw and using, like you said, the one asset he has that nobody else has in here. Now, we've seen Belmont in the past because of the mile and a half, because of the slower pace, aggressive rides from horses that you don't expect to show speed. But I don't see any reason why We the People wouldn't be loose on the lead. How about you?
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. There's another element of him where in the Arkansas Derby with the big crowd there, I don't know what the contributing factor was, but he seemed to be very nervous that day. He seemed to be a horse that got very washed out and might have lost his race in the paddock and in the post parade. Now we go back to the Peter Pan. It was a rainy day. There was very few people at Belmont that day. Now we go to the Belmont, big crowd again. Is that a concern at all to you?
Well, it is at 2-1. I mean, it's not the major concern for me, and more so it's the price and the lack of seasoning versus this quality of competition. But it's definitely something to add to the mix. I don't hate We the People in this spot, but as the morning line favorite and likely one of the favorites, I do think there are better options.
Now, 2 horses that are coming straight from the Kentucky Derby to the Belmont Stakes. We mentioned Mo Donegal and Rich Strike. Both of them offer similar running styles, although I think there's an argument to be made that Mo Donegal doesn't necessarily have to be as far back as Rich Strike. I think he got off to a slow beginning from the rail draw in the Kentucky Derby, and his early pace situation was pretty much decided for him at that point. I think he could lay closer here, especially if the pace is slow. He really was glued to the rail going around the far turn and then kind of gradually shifted wide where he came to a wide point at the top of the stretch and did run on nicely and seemed to be a horse that can get every bit of the mile and a half. And Rich Strike certainly is bred to run 8 all day long. But we've seen this Belmont year in and year out where deep run closers are just typically not the type of horse you want to be on.
And I agree with you on Mo Donegal. He's a horse that has been towards the rear in a lot of his races recently, but he has tactical speed, especially if they don't go fast, to be up closer. And I expect that to be the exact scenario. I would think Guy Ortiz Jr. would want him in kind of the second flight. No reason to be all the way in the back for the reasons you mentioned. And just because he doesn't have to be, I think a lot of the well off the pace efforts have been more circumstantial with races where more speed and the pace is faster. So Mo Donegal should be mid-pack.
I agree with you. Now, Rich Strike, I think, is going to be much farther back. And it really comes down to the fact, do you think this horse is a one-hit wonder? Or getting back to dirt, did he show the type of ability that he has? I think everything went perfectly for him. Sonny Leon made every right move in that race. Everything, the Red Seas parted. It could not have gone any better for him to get the win. And there is something to be said about Sonny Leon racing at Belmont Park for the first time, going 12 furlongs for the first time and picking the right spot to make that move. I think, once again, everything is going to need to go right for this horse to get a piece of this.
Right. And it was 80-1 where everything went right last time. That was, none of us were on him, or a couple people claimed to be. This time at 3-1 on the line, he's an absolute toss for me. He's run his best races at Churchill Downs. He got everything to go perfect for him, including that hectic early pace. That's not going to happen again. Ships out of town, totally different racetrack at Belmont Park than at Churchill Downs. If this horse is going to be 3-1, I'm not only going to try to beat him on top, but I'm going to try to knock him out of the try. And that's where I'm going to try to get value out of the race.
A horse that's in this race that a lot of people have pointed to the pedigree and said, well, she's going to want the 12 furlongs is Nest. And I've heard comparisons of her to being similar to Rags to Riches coming into this race in terms of pedigree. It's Todd Pletcher. This is a daughter of Curlin. She's not Rags to Riches from the standpoint, in my opinion, anyway, of pedigree. She ran great in the Kentucky Oaks. She was the second best filly that day. But this is still a filly going 12 furlongs who, from a speed figure standpoint, needs to take a nice step forward in order to be a competitor at the top level.
I think all of these runners are happy that Curlin isn't in the race. That's Rags to Riches had to beat. So I'm with you 100%. You know, Nest to me is a little bit of a tough read. The effort over the wet fast track at Keeneland was really impressive. Came back with a solid effort. I didn't think had much of an excuse in the Kentucky Oaks. The distance shouldn't be a question mark. I think it's going to be a price-driven decision for me. If she's at 8-1, I could see definitely including her at least in for second and for third, not on top for me. But I like the fact that she's in this race. It definitely makes it a little more exciting.
Conspicuous by his absence in our discussion so far is the horse that you and I both are quite fond of in the spot, number 5, Creative Minister for Ken McPeak, a trainer who has shown that he can certainly get a horse ready for the Belmont Stakes and certainly get them to the winner's circle in the Belmont Stakes. This is still a rapidly developing, lightly raced 3-year-old son of Creative Cause out of a Tappet mare. You go back to the 2 efforts prior to the Preakness. They showed the type of ability that he has. He was kind of even in the stretch in the Preakness, but Scott, going through all the speed figures and everything that I look at, I think that Preakness was a pretty quick race in comparison to the Kentucky Derby from start to finish. I think it was a better race than the Kentucky Derby from start to finish. And I'm not going to be too hard on this horse finishing third in his first time in a grade 1 coming out of an allowance. The question I have for him is the similar question to everybody else. It is the 1.5 miles. Now you see Tappet on the bottom of the pedigree, but Tambaz was not exactly a route runner, and his siblings have gone up to about 1 1/16 miles or so. So this is definitely a true test for stamina for him as well. But I do think he's a very talented horse who's going to offer a relatively realistic price.
Yeah, the distance, a slight concern. Obviously, 3 races in 5 weeks and kind of a lot for a lightly raced horse. A less experienced horse is a question. I could see it going either way, but I think the price we're going to get will make it worth a gamble. And what I really like here is I think, as we talked about, we the people will be the pace setter. I think Brian Hernandez Jr. is going to have this horse in second. And I agree with you, Darin. The Preakness, I don't know if it was better than the Kentucky Derby or whatnot, but I can tell you the top 2 runners in the Preakness would be odds on in the Belmont Stakes. Epicenter, and of course, early voting. Distance aside, those horses are just faster than the ones in here. And Creative Minister held his own, got a good trip that day, took advantage, though, getting a third. If he can run a similar race or take a little bit of a step forward here, I do think he can spring the upset. So it will be Creative Minister on top for me in the Belmont this year.
And I am in complete agreement. Hopefully the price is there. I see the race unfolding in a very similar fashion. So Creative Minister for both of us in this final jewel of the Triple Crown. Be sure to play with us at TwinSpires. And don't forget, we have that great Belmont Park money back special offer all weekend long. Make sure there's enough runners in the race to qualify for the promotion. Get those win bets in. And if your horse runs second or even third in some of the races, you're going to get that money back. Thanks so much for joining us. For Scott Shapiro, this is Darin Zoccali. We'll talk to you again next time.